What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing another Hidden Gems video talking about defensive tackles, basically interior defensive linemen within Madden 23, which guys you should target for 3-4 interior D linemen, which would be D tackle, left end, and right end, as well as both D tackles in a 4-3 system, and talking about your rushing D tackles as well. So all of those things factored in to combine to interior D linemen. That's what we're talking about. Let's find at least 10 hidden gem interior defensive linemen / D tackles within Madden 23 for you. One player that I want to note that I want to make sure is absolutely on this list, even though they're kind of just straight up a good player, is Justin Madubuike, or however you pronounce his name. And the specific reason that I want to mention him with the first spot on this list is because I just added him in my Titans franchise, and he is an absolute monster on the defensive line as an interior defensive lineman. And the reason being for that is that he is very good at getting off blocks. He has good finesse move, good block shed, which is a unique skill set, and you can certainly get his power moves up very quickly. And he has really good athleticism for what is essentially a defensive tackle. I mean, he's 6'3", 293. When he was drafted, I'm pretty sure he was listed as a D tackle, and he's in the high 70s, 78 to be exact, with Star Dev. And I had some requests to make sure that I include their development when I go about talking about these videos. So I'm going to make sure that I highlight their development as well. So this is one that you're not going to see a massive amount of growth out of this guy, but in the 25 to 26 age range, you're going to see him get up into the low 80s, and he will be a monster in the low 80s. You really don't need to get him any higher than that. The next player on this list in the 2 spot is going to be Bobby Brown III, and the primary reason here being that he is just the genuine embodiment of a hidden gem and what you want to see in terms of overall and age. At 22 years old, a 69 overall, that's going to be a player that you can kind of find in the draft a lot of the time, and so you can get him right away. He's a big player at 6'4", 325, but he has pretty reasonable athleticism for that size. 72 speed isn't great, but 80 acceleration is pretty good. That's going to help him fire off the ball. He starts with not terrible block shedding for a 69 overall and 69 power moves, which again can be increased. So he's not going to be technically sound to start off with, but a player that you can definitely build into what you want him to be. And I think that you could bring him in and start him pretty quickly, and he would have an impact, and you will see growth out of this guy. So we can't not include him. He's only got 1 year of experience, so he is literally the perfect candidate for a Hidden Gems video. With the 3rd spot on this list, I wanted to highlight Solomon Thomas, and yeah, he's up there now at 27 years old, so this is not going to be a developmental prospect in any sense of the imagination. This is going to be a player that can plug in on the interior of your defensive line, and is just going to be a gap filler, a bridge player, whatever you want to call him. And so Solomon Thomas, 71 overall, 27 years old, is just a very athletic interior defensive lineman, and to be honest with you, he's kind of an edge player. So you can see that he's only 256 pounds, but he is classified as a D tackle, so you do play him inside, and he does make an impact. He doesn't have crazy power moves, finesse moves. I mean, his finesse moves are pretty bad, and that's his highest rating at a 70. So you're not going to see a crazy impact out of him, but you will see him occasionally shed a block, and he's very quick to track down the quarterback or track down the running back because of the athleticism that he adds. So that does add some value. So just quickly looking at him, he is a normal dev, and I actually want to go back real quick to my last suggestion to make sure that I highlight his dev, because I think I forgot to. Bobby Brown is only a normal dev, so keep that in mind as well. With the 4th spot on this list, I want to highlight Javon Kinlaw, another player that I've personally had quite a bit of experience with that can be made into a very good player. You'll notice a lot of the same things with him, from good size at 6'5", 319, he's only 24 years old and a 73, to decent acceleration at 79 acceleration. He's not a super slow D tackle, so he is into the 70s, at least in that regard. He does have 90 plus strength, but what I really like about him is that he has both power moves and finesse moves. His power moves are better, so you're going to utilize him primarily as a bull rusher, and if you get him a couple upgrades, he will be a very effective bull rusher, and his block shedding is not terrible to start off with. So he does have a decent skill set. It is unfortunate now that he's in that 24 age range, so you're not going to see a ton of development out of him, but he doesn't need a ton of development again to make an impact like some of the guys we've talked about. So he can be a very effective D tackle, and you're probably going to be able to bring him into your team at a pretty inexpensive price like some of the guys we've mentioned already, because he's not 22 years old or super high overall or anything. And the additional thing to mention here is that he is also a star dev, so that is helpful on top of that. The fifth player that I want to add to this list, and this is coming from a team that has a lot of D tackles, is going to actually be Fletcher Cox. And there's, again, a very good reason for that. They just drafted Jordan Davis, who is going to be a stud for a while for this team on the defensive line with his athleticism and his size combination. They also have Javon Hargrave, who presents quite a bit of pass rushing potential. Fletcher Cox is kind of the odd man out at this point at 31 years old and an 81 overall. But I've noticed that in a lot of franchises, he adds a massive amount of value, and I try to pick him up whenever I can because people tend to overlook him. He is a very effective pass rusher still at this point, and he's a decent run stopper. I mean, he's got 80 power moves to start, 75 block shed, 92 strength still, and pretty good athleticism on the D-line. He's always been known as a good pass rusher and a little bit of an athletic defensive lineman, so I really like picking him up and plugging him into a lineup. That quickly leads me to the sixth spot on this list, who, again, we could talk about maybe Hargrave being in that spot, but I'm going to specifically talk about Milton Williams, with Jordan Davis being the focal point of this defensive line. Milton Williams at 6'3", 290, only 23 years old and a 74 overall is a fantastic combination. And in addition to that, he has 83 speed, so one of the most athletic players we've talked about so far. And if you can't tell, I really value athleticism on the defensive line, especially on the interior of the defensive line, because being able to track down the quarterback and the ball carrier once they shed a block is crucial. You'll notice that a lot of the big run stoppers that are heavier, that are slower, yeah, they'll block shed, but they won't make the tackle in the backfield, or they won't be able to get to the quarterback in time. Well, that's because they just don't have the athleticism to do so. So the way to go is often with these athletic players. Now, he does only have 83 strength, so you might find him a little bit weaker in the run game, but he does come in with, you know, a decent little bit of a skill set here. 74 block shed, 72 power moves. He's not going to be the greatest right now, but again, this is a player that I want to talk about having a lot of upside with only 1 year of experience. He is also a normal dev, and then as I had mentioned, Fletcher Cox here is a superstar dev. Now, the next player I want to talk about here is on the Buffalo Bills with the 7th spot, and the Buffalo Bills have a plethora of defensive linemen, young defensive linemen to boot. It's actually kind of crazy how many high potential defensive linemen they have drafted as of late. The player I really want to talk about here, though, is Epenesa. This is a player that has super high pedigree. He was talked about as a potential early first-round draft pick whenever he was being drafted 2 years ago. So 23 years old, 73 overall is a pretty good combination, but the thing that I want you to know about him is that he is programmed to play well because of the pedigree. So we talk about players being potentially programmed behind the scenes to be a good player. He is one that is programmed to play well, and you can see that his skill set is certainly more lended towards a interior defensive lineman with only 77 speed, and that's pretty good for an interior defensive lineman, not very good for an edge rusher. 84 strength, 83 awareness, 82 play rec to start off with. You might think that that is kind of inflating his rating, but I've found in recent years that awareness and play rec are actually pretty important for defensive linemen. They tend to get after the quarterback better if they have good awareness and play rec. He also has 78 power moves, 70 finesse, and 70 block shed, so it's not going to take long to get him up to a really good potential pass rusher there on the inside, or even a run stopper. And when we click into him, we can see that he has star dev. I actually think he should have superstar dev. I think the Bills are actually kind of missing out by not utilizing him more, at least from the start when they drafted him, but I think they do have a plan for him in the long haul. Nonetheless, with all the other players on this team, Epenesa is potentially expendable. With the 8th spot on this list, I want to highlight of the New England Patriots, Christian Barmore, 23 years old, 74 overall, and we can see that he is very much an interior defensive lineman at 6'4", 310, 73 speed, 88 strength, and you kind of get the point here, much of the same skill set. He does have 78 finesse moves, which may be appealing to some of you, being able to have those finesse moves on the inside, and 75 block shedding. This is another player that has star dev and a player that you should be looking for. Number 9 on this list will be Dayo Adeyingbo. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, probably not saying it correctly, but nonetheless, a 72 overall 22-year-old that is behind very good players like Kwity Paye, for example. 80 speed, 85 acceleration, good agility, 84 strength, which is actually pretty reasonable for an athlete like this on the D-line. He's not really going to be that great at power moves, another finesse rusher on the D-line, and 72 block shed, but how can you beat that 72 overall 22-year-old combination? And this is a normal dev player. And with the final spot on this list, I did want to talk about another veteran player, but a player that I really feel like is going to be available out there for a lot of people in franchise mode, simply because the Falcons are in a rebuild mode. Yes, he does have a high cap penalty and all that stuff, but if the Falcons really want to build up a team for the future, Grady Jarrett may not be the player to hang on to. He may be a valuable trade asset. At a 29-year-old, he is an 86 overall star dev player that does have a fantastic skill set. Now, unfortunately, he's not as athletic, so you might want to run him more so as a true D tackle, a true nose tackle. 92 strength, 96 awareness, 94 play rec, good power moves at 87, half-decent finesse moves at 75, and 85 block shedding. But the real value here, like I said, is in taking this guy and using him as a defensive tackle. So he is listed as an 86 right now as a defensive end, but if we move him over to defensive tackle, you'll notice that he goes up even further. So he's actually an 88 overall. This is a guy that very recently was a superstar X factor within the game and in the 90 overalls. So he is, again, another player that is programmed to play well, and I have had much success with him in the past. This is one of those guys that I talk about, though. The trade-off is still there, that he's not that athletic, so tracking down the quarterback, tracking down the running back is not necessarily his forte. He kind of has to block shed into the play to make a play happen, so keep that in mind. Hopefully that you guys will find this video useful. If you do, leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you have not already. Check out my Patreon in the link down in the description if you guys want to support this channel outside of YouTube. We know that their algorithm can be a little bit funny, so certainly consider doing that. But nonetheless, I hope this video is useful for you. If it was, leave all that feedback down below, and as always, I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you have a good one.